Hello and welcome to another episode of the Everything EV podcast, the podcast dedicated to everything electric. I'm your host, Charlie Atkinson, and in this podcast we'll be discussing everything to do with electric travel. So whether it be cars, bikes, boats, or even planes, rest assured we'll have it covered. We'll be joined by regular guests from within the industry, and we'll be bringing you other things such as electric motorsport coverage, electric car reviews, and much, much more. Be sure to like and subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts from to make sure you get every episode as soon as it's released. Today we're joined by Lunaz Design, and specifically its CEO David Lorenz and John Hilton, Managing Director and former Technical Director for Renault F1. We'll be talking to both David and John about the company's work in upcycling and converting classic cars to electric, as well as some of the other projects they are involved in. It's a special time to be talking to the guys from Lunaz, as it was recently announced that David Beckham has become one of a series of investors to back the company. As well as this, Lunaz has also announced that it is to begin working on HGVs and other large industrial vehicles as part of its portfolio. Before we get into the interview, here's a quick clip of CEO David Lorenz talking about the recent announcements.
We're announcing recent investment from David Beckham, the Barclay family, Rubens and Delaus. This allows us to move into the commercial front, taking our proprietary powertrain and applying it to wider applications with Lunaz Applied Technology. Having names like this behind the company is a key strategic play. It opens up markets around the world. We're not just going to be UK based, we're already looking at alternative countries where we'll be expanding in the future. We're taking used diesel and petrol vehicles across the board, upcycling and remanufacturing and re-engineering these vehicles for a clean air future. You do not just have to build new vehicles. You can take what already exists, re-engineer it, and put it back to as a factory new vehicle with all the modern technology and engineer that vehicle for a future.
So stick around and see what David and John had to say about Lunaz Design. Well, first of all, thanks for joining us today. Now, obviously, this is a really exciting time for everyone at Lunaz. Could you just talk to us about today's announcement?
It's a really exciting time here at Lunaz. We recently moved into our new headquarters here, based at Silverstone, overlooking Club Corner, and we five-folded the venue recently, and we're looking to secure further square foot in coming months. And it's a really exciting time because we're transitioning from just Lunaz Design, which was looking at the restoration and re-engineering of some of the most beautiful classic cars in the world, to looking at the applied technology side of the business and looking at the powertrain we've created and looking at the further applications in the commercial front.
Yes, exactly. So we're starting to look at trucks, how we can take not only the electric powertrain that we develop for the cars and carry that over to the commercial vehicles, but also the whole of the remanufacturing process, because this is about taking youth vehicles, turning the odometer back to 0 miles and giving them a whole new life.
No, it's really across the board of Lunaz. It's taking what already exists and re-engineering it as we transition to an electric future. And it's just taking yourself away from the build new mentality, whether it be a passenger vehicle or a commercial vehicle.
Yeah, if we could just focus on the history of Lunaz for a second. It was founded in 2018, if I'm correct.
Yes, correct. So it was founded in 2018 when my paths crossed with John Hilton, and being technical director at Renault Formula One and then setting up his own company in the hybrid system space called Flybrid. It really was the connection I was looking for. For a year, I'd looked for the right individual to set this company up with. And from mid 2018, we went about getting a really strong team of engineers. Hence, we chose Silverstone as the location, because it's hub of technology and engineering in the UK. And we've set up an incredible team here. We designed and developed the powertrain using great tier one suppliers, and we've now been able to put this to wider use. And since 2018, we've grown the company considerably, and we're now the largest site at Silverstone.
Obviously, a lot of the headlines today are going to be about the fact that David Beckham has taken a stake in the company. But what does it mean to have someone like David Beckham supporting your business? It seems like you're entering a new era for the company.
Exactly. So David's joined other investors, the Barclay family, Rubens and Delaus, and they're really strategic investors to take us from where we are today to look at rolling out into the commercial space. And David was initially attracted to Lunaz by what we were doing with the historic vehicles, but really, when he came to understand the wider application and what we were looking for in our future, is when obviously he got really excited about what Lunaz was about.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you mentioned he is a strategic investor and he was attracted to the company for all of the reasons you've just listed. What's his role, and all of the investors, what are their roles going to be within the business? Are they going to be active and engaged within the running of the company, or are they just purely funding the business?
It's just about funding and also having an active role in the company throughout all of the investors. They all come with great persona around them, and they're great strategic people to take us for our future. And they have an understanding of where we want to go with the company, and really understanding that we have to stop the build new mentality and re-engineer what already exists. There's 2 billion vehicles on this planet. And as we transition to EV, we cannot expect to just scrap 2 billion vehicles. And, it really is looking at that ecological impact point of view, which really excites everyone that's behind this company.
Yeah, obviously, as you just mentioned there are 2 billion vehicles on the road, which one day are going to need to be upcycled or converted into electric, and they can't just all be scrapped. So obviously that's going to make a lot of work for you guys. I just wanted to touch on some of the challenges in the work you do and how you expect that to develop and change over the next few years.
I'd say that some of the bigger challenges on our side are actually in the remanufacturing of the vehicles. The electrification's reasonably well understood now. There are ever increasing numbers of components becoming available to us at better pricing. We'll expect the prices of batteries and things to fall as sales volume of electric vehicles go up, and we have access to all the same components as mainstream car makers. But on the remanufacturing side, that's quite unusual in cars. Yes, in the classic car and restoration business, people are doing this, but these are generally small concerns doing, tens of cars a year. We want to do thousands, and working out exactly how to do that is quite a piece of engineering that we're engaged in, right now. Exactly how to scale this up to proper size.
Okay, great. And now, for those that aren't too familiar with the work that Lunaz Design does, could you just walk us through your portfolio of vehicles? I noticed on your website that you've been involved in the world's first fully electric Range Rover, but could you just shine a light on some of the other vehicles and other projects you've been involved with since you were founded a few years ago?
We came to market with the world's first electric Rolls-Royce, the world's first electric Bentley, and the world's first electric Range Rover, and actually Jaguar sports car being the XK120. And it was a great achievement. It's ahead of the OEMs, and it really took what the world wants. Everyone wants EV alternatives. And as we do this transition to EV, it is key that we have choice over which vehicle we can drive. And it's fantastic seeing all of the car brands coming out now with their EV alternatives. But being first to market obviously was a fantastic achievement by the team here at Lunaz. And we produce 2 new marks of classics each year. So we do the engineering based on each platform and then go into production with each vehicle. So every one of those vehicles, being the Bentley, Rolls-Royce and Range Rover, we are now in production with. And if you see our facility down here, it is full of those vehicle classes. And that will carry a crossover to the applied technology side of the business. We will be releasing various different classes of vehicle that we will be doing the development work on and prototype build, and then going into production with that vehicle class.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, you work within the electric vehicle sector, and everything we do at EV Powered is focused on electric vehicles and electric cars. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on the wider EV sector. Obviously, we've got things like the government 2030 ban on petrol and diesel cars. But yeah, I just wanted to get your overarching thoughts on the sector as a whole.
Yeah, so obviously legislation is really driving this right now. And it's fantastic. I mean, we all notice it. Clean air quality is key for our future. And that transition from petrol and diesel to EV just brings us that clean air future. And it is so important for future generations that we make this transition. And it's fantastic that legislation is driving this forward at pace.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to what we were talking about earlier and the other part of the announcement today, that you're going to be working on HGVs and other industrial vehicles. Now, there's a lot of focus on electric cars and electric vehicles at the minute, and the industry seems to be growing at its fastest rate with sort of OEMs and everyday cars. Do you feel that HGVs and other larger industrial vehicles have almost been left behind in terms of electrification?
In one sense, yes, but there's some great alternatives coming out. You saw Volvo release their lineup of all of the new EV trucks they're doing. But what's really interesting to look at is the trucks that are coming out and the new refuse trucks, EV alternatives that are coming out by the OEMs right now. They are fundamentally the same truck as the diesel current vehicle, which has been the same if you look at a Euro 5 spec engine to a Euro 6 spec engine. And trucks of 2011 or thereabouts, they are not allowed to drive in our city centres anymore because we banned the use of Euro 5 within certain centres. And now we've moved to Euro 6, and now we're doing the shift to EV platform. That does not mean you need to build new. If it's on the same platform, then you have to re-engineer what already exists.
Yeah, so from a technical perspective, I just wanted to touch on some of the key differences that comes with working on HGVs and larger industrial vehicles. Obviously, you've previously worked on classic cars like the Rolls-Royces, the Jaguars, and everything we've already touched on. But what are going to be some of the key difference on working on these larger commercial vehicles?
The key difference with the trucks, first of all, they're not rusty. So when you start with a relatively new vehicle, the principal job of restoration is much quicker and easier, and therefore cheaper, which is good. There's also quite a lot of packaging space available on the trucks. There's, the engines and gearboxes in these vehicles are huge, and that gives us a lot more room for batteries. And when you look at the exhaust systems and the after treatment systems and the fuel tanks that are hanging on the side of the chassis, there's lots of room there for battery packs. So actually the packaging task is greatly easier than it is on the cars. And we expect this conversion to be much more straightforward, to be honest.
And the key is really to look at the local authorities and governments and, fleet operators around the world and give them a transition to EV, which can come in, which is cost effective. Because if you look at the new EV alternatives, it's not within their budgets to replace their entire fleets currently to EV. They have to look at their current fleets and look at how to re-engineer these vehicles to an EV platform, whilst not having the penalty of having an old vehicle. We update all of the technology, we add on all of the extra cameras, and it's about having a re-engineered vehicle without the penalty of it being a used vehicle. It's as factory new specification, matching a new EV alternative.
And I would add that these vehicles they're also much lower CO2. So the amount of embedded CO2 involved in building the vehicle is actually quite a big proportion of the total CO2 emissions of a refuse truck that does a relatively low annual mileage. These are 8,000 miles a year, roughly. So when you recycle the vehicle and you reduce its embedded CO2 footprint, you make a really big difference. So in terms of air quality, our vehicles are just the same as a new electric truck. But in terms of total CO2, our vehicles are nearly, if a full new electric truck's about 35% better on CO2 than a diesel truck over the total lifetime, and we're about 60% better. So it's a big step. It's nearly twice as good as buying new electric.
Yeah, just off the back of that, you said obviously it's a big step to go towards these HGVs. I was just wondering, what was the motivation behind that? What was the inspiration on going from these classic cars to making the step over to the larger HGVs and industrial vehicles?
When John and I founded this business, we road mapped out all of the applications we could do with the powertrain we were creating. The key for me was to start with the classics, to come to market with a product that could be internationally recognized and get the Lunaz brand out there. The plan was always to go into alternative vehicles, and you'll see for years to come what we've planned and what we have to come.
Yeah, so it was about having all of those foundations in place before you then branch off into, like you said, the HGVs and the other types of vehicles.
Exactly, and also really building the best cars and vehicles we know how. We've got an extraordinarily talented engineering team here, obviously led by John, who was technical director at Renault, and then we've got Jason Hill, who joined us for 20 years at ProDrive, and we've got an incredible team here to really make a difference in how we look at automotive and how we look at build new over remanufacturing.
Okay, brilliant. Now, obviously, with everything we've spoken today about the two announcements, presumably the sky's the limit for you guys. I was just wondering what your hopes for the business are over the next few years.
We've got to make a difference. We've got to make a mark on actually how we look at transitioning to EV. We have to get out of the mentality of the only option is to buy new to replace vehicles. And that's where Lunaz is going to make its mark. And it's really changing the mindset to remanufacturing vehicles that already exist.
That's all for this episode, and a massive thank you to both David and John for joining us on the podcast. If you liked this episode, be sure to check out all our other episodes, and please do remember to subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts from. For daily news coverage, features and much more, head over to our website at evpowered.co.uk. Thanks once again for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Everything EV podcast.